The S word. What do you think it is? Sex. No. Next week is sex. Everybody thought it was sex. First service, they're yelling out sex. I think when I said, no, it's not sex, that's next week, people left and said, I'll see you next week. But yeah, the S word today is submission. And I didn't want to make it, I wrote that title without the word submission in it because I thought nobody would come, maybe especially women, if they thought, all he's going to do is talk about submission. And I'm not supposed to be here. This message, well, I told Ann earlier, a month ago, I said, you're doing the message on submission. They need to hear submission from a woman. So you're doing it. She says, I'm not doing it. You're doing it. So that's how submission works in our house, all right? I'll just close in prayer and send you home. That's how it works. No, actually, that's not what happened. She was really hoping to do this message, and she came home from Israel on a 8-9-day trip on Tuesday, and by Tuesday night was sick. I've never seen her not get off the couch in 2 days. She's that sick. Friday, she got better. Looked like she's going to be able to do it. I told the Lions I'll be with you in Minnesota, which I normally do. I'd be on the sideline just about right now getting ready for our game. And then we went to my son's football game yesterday, and she couldn't do it. She couldn't, there's no way. And so I told the Lions, see ya. I'll watch it on my couch. I've never done that. It's going to be really cool. And hopefully they'll win without me. If they do, I'll probably never go again, but... and some of you are like, what are you talking about? I'm their chaplain, that's why I do that. But here's what happened. Honestly, Ann has a heart to want to talk about this and really explain it from a biblical standpoint. And so I told her I would do it. And so we're driving from, actually I didn't tell her, we're still trying to decide. We're driving from my son's game. He plays at Central Michigan, but they played at Eastern Michigan yesterday. So as we left the game, we were driving to 23. And if I go north, I'm going home, and if I go south, I'm going to the airport. And she is such a maid. She's like, I can do it. I'm looking over at her. Eyes are down. Like, if she walked on stage, you would have been like, ooh, what's wrong? Because she just looked that sick. So I knew what I needed to do, and I turned north on 23, and she goes, what are you doing? I go, I already contacted the Lions. We're good. I'm going to do the message tomorrow. Here's what she does. It was like that a bell went off. She started crying. She's like, that is the nicest thing you've ever done for me. I'm like, really? This is it right here? So she's still home in bed today and trying to get well. And by the way, she coughed all night. At one point I said, honey, you need to go to another room. She goes, I'm not moving, you move. I'm like, there's submission again, just amazing. So let's talk about submission. There's a verse in the Bible that any man, most men that have ever been in the church or have ever read the Bible much know this verse. They've memorized this verse. It's amazing. They don't know any other verse in the Bible. They couldn't even tell you where the book of Genesis is. It's the first book of the Bible. But they know this verse. This is their all-time favorite verse. It's the only one they ever memorized. Here it is. This is every man's favorite verse. Wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands as you do the Lord. I'm not kidding. There are men that know that verse and know nothing else. And they use it as I call a Bible dart. Your wife will say something that, she disagrees with you. You're like, hey, submit. And you throw this Bible dart, like, I got you. Like, I know the Bible. Do you know another verse? Yeah, I know another verse that says, wives, be subject to your husbands as unto the Lord. That's the same verse in a different translation, okay? That's what men are like. It's like, that's what we know. Today, we got to talk about what that means. And I've actually heard Ann talk about this, and she doesn't know it. When we do a Family Life Weekend to Remember, Family Life is a ministry based in Little Rock, and they do conferences all around the country, and we speak for them. On Sunday morning, it starts Friday night, all day Saturday, and then Sunday morning, we split the men and women up. And I go with the men into a ballroom that's split in half and talk about being a godly husband and dad, and she talks to the wives about being a wife and mom. And you're never allowed to have a woman in our session or a man in their session. And I kept hearing how good she was, and I know she talks about this submission thing. So I don't remember where it was, but I snuck in the wives' room and laid on the floor. I'm not kidding, because if they saw me, they would have kicked me out. So I just laid on the floor. I didn't see her, but I heard what she talks about. And here's what I saw. She uses a doormat as an illustration of what submission isn't, but what people think it is. And I rode my motorcycle today. It's hard to get a doormat on your motorcycle, but I tied it on there. But here's what I heard her, and I can see her doing. She goes, this is what people think submission is. You're a doormat. You just lay down your life, and your husband will tell you what to do, and you have to do it, and they just walk all over you. And a lot of men think the same thing. Submit woman means what I say, I'm the head, I'm the dictator, the Bible says that, God says that, you do what I say. That's not a good definition of submission. This isn't what it looks like. And she grew up sort of thinking, that's what a godly woman does, just be a doormat. Is that what it means? No. We're going to find out today what it means from a guy. And that's not the best way to do it, but I can tell you at least what the Bible says, and then we'll have a couple women come up here and sort of tell you what maybe that looks like in their home. But what we're basically doing, as you know, is we're walking through a book called The Meaning of Marriage by Tim Keller. And I'm telling you, if you haven't gotten this book yet, and I think you probably have because we sold out several times, get it, because Kathy, his wife, writes this chapter called Embracing the Other, which means your other is your spouse, and they're so different. Usually we reject their differentness rather than embrace it. And she does a great job of saying this. I'm going to go a little theological for a second because I think we need to understand the foundation, and then we'll try and figure out what this means. But here's how we got to look at submission and any other biblical truth. God had an original design or framework or intent for marriage and for how relationships should be. And we know what that design is because he originally designed it in the very beginning of the Bible. Some of you know, Genesis chapter 1 and 2, the very first book in the Bible. Genesis means beginning. So he tells us how the world was created, how the Garden of Eden, and he placed a man and a woman, a husband and wife, Adam and Eve, in that garden. We don't need to get into skeptics' thoughts of that's just a myth. I believe it's real because Jesus referred to them as real people. It's a whole other thing. Anyway, so here's a husband and wife, and he designs a relationship and how it works and what roles look like in the original design. Now, we got to understand what that is because what happened in Genesis chapter 3, the third chapter of the first book of the Bible, man falls. It's called theologically the fall of mankind. Man sins. What does that mean? Everything then changed. The original design, God's original heart, was messed up. And from the fall of mankind, by the way, you and I have been born into life with a nature of a fallen nature, a broken, sinful nature. We referred to it in week 1 of the series as every marriage has a problem. The problem is what? We are selfish. Some of you remember, that's the biggest problem. It's basically an evidence of sin in our lives. That twist, that corrupts God's original design. But, and I'm giving you all this as an intro, but that original design is restored or can be restored because of an historical event that we know about here. You know what event I'm talking about? The death and resurrection of God himself, Jesus Christ. We talk about it mostly at Easter, but it's basically in every single message you'll ever hear here because that event gives God and you and I the possibility of taking the original design and living it out now, not just later in glory. Does it make any sense? I just gave you theology that you would pay thousands of dollars for in 5 minutes. Original design got twisted. It can be reclaimed because of Jesus. Now, what are we going to do today? Let's go back and look at the original design so we know what we, if we're a follower of Christ, the church, can reclaim. We got to know what the original design was. In fact, let me read you some quotes that Kathy has in this chapter. And she says this, Genesis chapter 3 recounts the fall, capital F, fall, in which both man and woman sin against God and are expelled from the Garden of Eden. We immediately see the catastrophic change in the unity between man and woman. Before this moment, complete unity, perfection. After the fall, it all falls apart. She says this, the air is filled with blame-shifting, finger-pointing, and accusation. Is it? Yeah. Is it in your marriage? Yeah. Why? Because of this sin. See, some of you know this, but if you go back to the original story, you see this amazing relationship. Sin happens, and then God comes to find them. Do you remember this part of the story? I'm not going to show it to you. I'm just going to recount it. But I said this in week 1 or week 2. Everything you need to know about life is in the garden. Remember me saying that? Everything you need to know. So what are Adam and Eve doing at this moment after sin? They're hiding. They cover their bodies. They hide. By the way, what do they cover their bodies with? Animal skin. It's a whole nother ball game, but guess how they got animal skin? Something was killed, blood was shed to cover their sin. Pointing to the cross, already in Genesis 1. That was deep. Did anybody catch that? That was heavy stuff right there. Okay, forget that. So, God comes to look for them. He says, where are you? Does God not know where they are? Of course he knows where they are. He wants them to unveil and come out of hiding. By the way, I said everything's in the garden. You and I hide too. We've been hiding ever since. We hide our sin. We hide our secrets. We don't want to unveil ourselves to anybody, especially at church. Those people would never be able to handle my thoughts and my sin, so we hide. Started in the garden. God says, come out. He comes out. And then what happens? Just what Kathy said, blame shifting, finger pointing, accusation. He says to Adam, Adam, what happened here? Adam says, remember? Literally, here's his words. The woman that you gave me handed me the fruit of the tree and I ate. What's he doing? Same thing your husband does every day. Same thing your wife does every day. It's like, she made me. Actually, he's not even blaming his wife. He's really blaming who? God, the woman that thou gavest me in the King James. He's blaming God. You talk about blame shifting and finger pointing accusation. I've said here many times, it's almost like Adam is saying, hey, God, you don't want to talk to me. You want to talk to apple breath over here. That's what you want to do. And that is exactly the result of the fall. So the original design is forever messed up until God restores it at the cross. Let me keep reading what Kathy says. She says, rather than their otherness, we're going to talk about that, rather than their otherness becoming a source of completion, it becomes an occasion for oppression and exploitation. The woman remains dependent and desirous of her husband, but it turns into an idolatrous desire, and his protection and love become a selfish lust and exploitation. Now, if you've been reading this book, you're like me, you read a paragraph like that and you go, whoa. Seriously, if any of you had that experience, like, wait a minute, that was like profound. What I just read is deep. You can't just keep reading. It's like, wait, what is that? Here's what she's saying. The natural desire of a woman for her husband in the original design was she desired him. That's a good thing. He desired her. Beautiful. We're going to talk a little bit next week about that in the area of sex. It wasn't just sex, it was all ways. But after the fall, it gets twisted. So now her desire, Kathy says, becomes idolatry. What does that mean? We said it in week 1. She wants this man, her husband, to fill her life and make her happy. And when he doesn't, she is upset, wrong, feels like she married the wrong person. By the way, it goes both ways. And we want to get out. And that's idolatry, because Keller says it so well in other books. He says this, when you have something really good and something you cherish in your life and you lose it, you should be sad. That's normal. But when you lose that good thing and you are devastated to the point you want to jump off a cliff, that's idolatry. That good thing has not just been a blessing from God, it's become your life. You see a high school girl who wants to die when her boyfriend breaks up with her, you're like, honey, you don't understand what's going on right now, but you have made him your life. Well, guess what? We get married and do the same thing, and that's what Kathy's saying. The original design was not that. It was a beautiful desire, but not, and by the way, the same thing happens for the guy. He should love his wife. It becomes a consuming lust. Again, I don't have time to get into that. She is just laying the framework of saying, we better know what the original design is. Okay? I'm going to tell you. Here we go. Today is 3 designer truths. I call them designer truths because they're from the designer. You wear designer jeans. We live on a designer planet. Marriage is to be done God's way, and what's that look like? Here's the first one, and these are profound. You better write them down because you've never heard anything so deep in your life. Here's the first one. God designed men and women differently. You're like, seriously, dude, that's it? Yeah, that's it. That's not profound at all, is it? But let me tell you something. That is the original design. God designed men and women completely differently. Every cell of our body, male, female, XX, XY, totally different from conception. That was God's design. Do you know that there are people that don't even realize that? They're like, well, men and women are different because of nurture, not because of nature. No, it's because of nature. God made it that way. But we do know this. Are men and women different? Yeah. Oh, yeah, they're a lot different. I'm not saying every man, every woman are, generalities. And I'm not obviously talking physically either. Physically, hopefully we're different. And I've heard 8 out of 10 times you can even tell by looking at somebody if they're a man or woman. Just kidding. Just making sure you're listening. But no, we are wired differently. I can illustrate it 100 different ways. I'll give you just 2 illustrations. One is Detroit Lions ministry. We started at the beginning of the season, and we have a couple study on Monday nights at one of our players' houses. But it isn't just couples. You can be married, you can be dating, and you can come as a single guy. Well, the first one we did, week 1 of the season, to open up the study, I said, hey, we haven't seen each other for a couple months. Let's go around the room just to get to know each other a little bit better. What's the best thing you did this off season? Just share real quickly. Boom, I had a baby. Oh, that's awesome. Oh, we got married. Oh, that's awesome. Oh, we got baptized. Oh, that's awesome. We took a trip. Okay. We get to Jason Fox. He's an offensive lineman from Texas. Played at University of Miami in Florida. He goes, well, I don't know. Mine aren't as good as any of these, but I thought it was the best thing I did this offseason. I go, dude, no rules here. Anything we do. He goes, I go, what'd you do? He goes, I blew up some hogs. Like, what do you mean, you shot some hogs? Well, we shot them first, and then we laid them down and put dynamite on them, and we blew them up. Here, I got video, and he shows this video. And all the guys jump out of their seats, they're like, whoa! And I'm not kidding, you see hogs that are flying with limbs going here and heads going here, and he's zooming in on it. Now, I know I just grossed out the women, but all the guys are like, cool. I want to see that video. It's on YouTube, by the way. But it just, I mean, it's like men and women are different. All the women are like, seriously? You guys want to see this video? Don't we want to study the Word of God? Yeah, we'll do that later. Let's see the video. It's like, wow. It's just different. I put in my notes something that Ann and I have read here before, but it's classic in terms of the difference between men and women. It's written by Dave Barry, comedic writer, about a hypothetical couple named Roger and Elaine who are going out for 6 months. Anybody remember this? Listen to this. This is classic. He says they're going out 6 months, and then one evening when they're driving home, a thought occurs to Elaine. Without really thinking, she says it out loud. By the way, he just made a little jab at women. Without really thinking, she says it out loud. Do you realize that as of tonight, we've been seeing each other for exactly 6 months? And then there's silence in the car. To Elaine, it seems like a very loud silence. She thinks to herself, gee whiz, I wonder if it bothers him that I said that. Maybe he's feeling confined by a relationship. Maybe he thinks I'm trying to push him into some kind of obligation that he doesn't want or isn't sure of. And Roger's over here thinking, gosh, 6 months. That's it. That's all he's got. And Elaine is thinking that, hey, I'm not sure I want this kind of relationship either. Sometimes I wish I had a little more space so I'd have time to think about whether I really want us to keep going the way we are, moving steadily toward, I mean, where are we going? Are we just going to keep seeing each other at this level? Let's see. Are we headed toward marriage, toward children, toward a lifetime together? Am I ready for that level of commitment? Do I even really know this person? And Roger is thinking, so that means it was, let's see, February when we started going out. Which was right after I had the car at the dealer's, which means, let me check the odometer. Whoa, I'm way overdue for an oil change. I can keep going, but let me ask you, why are you laughing? Because it's so true, right? And I'm not saying every guy's like Roger and every girl's like Elaine, but there's so much truth there that it makes us laugh. Now, let me ask you, where does that come from? I already said it. Is it the way we were raised? Is it because our parents gave boys G.I. Joes and girls Barbies? Is it nurture or is it nature? Well, I'll take you back to the first chapter of the first book of the Bible. Genesis 1 says this. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. This is God's design. God did this. God made men and women completely different on purpose. I remember seeing a Newsweek cover years ago. I'm not kidding. Newsweek cover story, breaking news. Scientists discover men and women are different from birth. Wow. How much that cost you? There it is. God told us that. We don't believe it. He designed us differently. Now, what's the point? The point is God's original intent was this. Appreciate the difference. Don't dishonor and try to change the difference. You understand that? See, what we do in marriage, we do in relationships, is females think men are so weird. Guys think women, who can understand them? So we get married and we're like, you're just wrong. The way you think is wrong. Let me tell you how you should think and act about, you ever done that in your marriage? Do it all the time. What's that? Sin nature, the fall, coming into God's original design. We can't even appreciate what he made. He made us different on purpose. Why? In a marriage, here's the purpose. Completion. She's different than you. Awesome. She completes you. Rocky said it back in first Rocky. She got gaps, I got gaps, together no gaps. That's it. That's great theology. So remember that. It's like, that's it. Together, we complete one another. But what we live in, and because of the fall, is competition. It's not about competition. It's about completion. In fact, I'll never forget, I'm not kidding, VHS video Ann and I watched first year of our marriage by Gary Smalley. Now his son teaches. And on that video, he said this, you need to honor your wife, your husband's differences. He goes, the word honor is an Old Testament Hebrew word. Honor your father and mother. It actually means this. And I remember him getting down on his knee and goes, it means to bend the knee. When you honor someone, your posture, and you don't get on your knees in our culture, but it's a posture that says, I am in the presence of someone extremely valuable. I go below, I go under, I prostrate myself to say, you are worthy of my honor. We don't do that in our culture. There are cultures, they would actually get down like this. But it's the same thing we do when we drop our jaw. When we see something awesome, we go, oh, wow, that's honor. And by the way, just a side little note here, you don't have to love someone to honor them. You honor the position sometimes. Honestly, if Barack Obama, our newly elected president, walked in this room right now, you know what would happen in this room? We would be honoring the position of the presidency. You might not have voted for him this week. You might not have. You might have. Doesn't matter. You would still honor that position. Why? Because it demands respect. Same thing your spouse demands. Honor means quit trying to change her. Quit trying to change him. I say in a marriage conference all the time, it's like we have this remote control with a little button on it labeled change, and we go, change. We don't realize we're doing it, but it's like, you talk so much, you're so emotional. That's how God made her. My wife has said to me before, could you touch me one time without wanting sex? That's how God made me. No, I'm not. But it's just like, that's what we do. But what does it look like in the original design recaptured by the cross would be this. Oh my goodness, honey, you are so different. Help me understand how you think like that. What are you processing right now? What is going on in your brain? That's honor. You know how I usually do it? What is your problem? Seriously, honey, what are you thinking that's just stupid? What's that? I'm not trying to be funny here at all. That is what I've done to dishonor how God made her uniquely different than me. I've learned, I'm not perfect at it, but I've learned over 32-year marriage to go, oh my gosh. Like sometimes when I'm just totally, absolutely confused by what she's doing or saying, that's like a symptom to me to go, oh my gosh, this is a chance to try and understand. Honey, seriously, what are you thinking right now? And sometimes she'll tell me, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's beautiful. I thought it was the stupidest thing I ever heard, but now I see, oh my gosh, you're so different than me. That's the original design. Okay, so that's step number one, or truth number one. Men and women are different. Second one gets a little better, okay? It's not as simple, but it's this. God designed men and women as equals. Men and women as equals. Big, big deal. We are equal according to God. Here's where it comes from, Genesis 1. God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, and over the livestock, and over all the wild animals. By the way, hunting is biblical. There it is, rule over. And he goes on to say, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. Now, here's what I want you to notice. Who is supposed to rule over? Excuse me, who? Both. Man and woman. It isn't man, woman, help him out. But he's going to rule over, and you're just side job here. You just sort of help out. No, they both rule over creation in the garden, extending to the world. That's equal. Then the next chapter, look at this. It says, the Lord God said, it is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him. This is where we get in trouble. If you've been around the church, this is the word that gets you in trouble. Helper suitable. What does that indicate? Oh, here's man, here's helper, suitable. He's the dude, you help out. That's not what it means. And by the way, you talk about men and women being equal according to God. Have you ever studied, and if you haven't, I challenge you to do this someday, what Jesus did to elevate women? It's an interesting, fascinating study. But when Jesus walked onto the planet, women in that culture, you think you're degraded a little bit in this culture? In that culture, oh my goodness. Women below property, women below livestock. I am not making this up. That is what the status of women in the times that Jesus walked into. Men were it. Why was property and livestock more important than women? Because it brought income. A woman had one thing, bear our children to keep our name to be a legacy. Women were the bottom. What did Jesus do? Again, I don't even have time to get into this. Jesus walks in. I've heard women say this. I can't believe in Jesus because of what he did to women. I'm like, what? You have no clue what you just said, woman. What he did to women is, oh my gosh, it's a study of how God views men and women equally. He used women as his illustrations in sermons and parables of faith. That would never be done. A woman, I guarantee you, men walked away in some of those sermons. Sermon on the Mount, I'm out of here. Widow's mite is an illustration of how a man should act. I'm out. No man could do it. This guy can't be of God. No, what he's saying, I am of God, and you've missed it. Women and men are equal. So we come to this word helper, suitable for, and let me tell you, just read you what Kathy says, because she does such a good job of teaching this. The English word helper is not the best translation for the Hebrew word ezer. E-Z-E-R is the Hebrew word used there in Genesis. Helper connotes merely assisting someone who could do the task almost as well without help. But ezer is almost always used in the Bible to describe God himself. Did you hear that? God is referred with the same word that a woman is referred to. He refers to himself as our helper. Does that mean he's below us? No. Contrary to the fact, he's very higher than us. He's not saying women are higher than men. He's just saying, I use it for me, I'm using it for women. That doesn't mean this, it means this. They are equal. She goes on to say this. Other times it is used to describe military help, such as reinforcements without which a battle would be lost. To help someone then is to make up what is lacking in him with your strength. A woman was made to be a strong helper, partner, companion, completer with the man. Then she does this. The word suitable, remember suitable helper, is just as unhelpful a translation. This translates a compound phrase that is literally like opposite him. The entire narrative of Genesis chapter 2, in which a piece of man is removed to create the woman, strongly implies that each is incomplete without the other. Male and female are like opposite to one another. They are like two pieces of a puzzle that fit together because they are not exactly alike nor randomly different, but they are differentiated such that together they can create a complete whole. Each sex is gifted for a different steps in the same great dance. Does that help? It's just reading and understanding the Bible correctly. Helper suitable means you were made as partners in full partnership. Not one better than the other. There are different roles we'll talk about in a second, but equality, yet different, is the same status. You know, when I teach with Ann up on the stage, I don't know what you think, but here's what I think. Number one, I know you think it's a lot better. It'd be better today too. But I'm telling you, I have never, ever sat on the stage, or Troy campus, wherever we are, in my seat, and Ann over here in her seat with our biblical text in front of us. I have never thought, hey, honey, I'm the man here, and I know how to teach the word, so you just fill in your little helper suitable stuff whenever you want, but let me handle the heavy lifting, okay? I've never, ever, I hope you don't ever feel that. I felt like full partners. She's equal. I hope there are times where you go, oh, if I evaluate what just happened today, she taught the word, and Dave filled in a little color commentary. Oh, now Dave's teaching the word, and it's equal status. We've never walked up here and thought, I'm the man, so you just, follow my lead. No, it's like, no, we're doing this together. I want your input. I want your advice. I want you to shape this message. I want you to give this message. Let's do this together. Why? Because that's how God designed man and woman to be together, even if they're given a message. When I looked at Ann's notes, because she originally wrote this message thinking she was give it, she had, as an illustration under this point, she had starting Kensington with Stephen, Paula, and Mark and Callie. And I'm like, that's all she had. I'm like, what were you going to say? She goes, when we started Kensington 22 years ago, 3 couples, Stephen, Paula, Mark and Callie, and Ann and I, she goes, and I've talked to Paula and Callie about this. She says, we felt and still do as equal partners in this venture. She goes, you guys never treated us like, okay, we're starting a church, you guys just take care of the kids. And when we're hungry, could you make us something and feed it to us? She goes, we were in meetings together, casting vision, writing the mission statement together 22 years ago. Our kids were running all crazy over the house. Now they're almost all married. It's just but they were running around, and there was never this sense of, you take care of the kids, we got this. No, it was like, we're in this together. We'll take care of the kids. You take care of the kids. Let's do this. We are building a church together. And Ann said, I even knew in year 1 that every woman that eventually comes to Kensington will feel the same way, because it is the viewpoint of what Scripture teaches God's design has been. To make any sense, and I'm sure we've missed that in many ways at Kensington for you women, but our heart has always been God's heart. You are different, awesome. You are equal, yes. To be a helper means a companion. And what does it actually mean in submission? Well, let's talk about that right now. God designed unique roles for marriage. Yes, there are unique roles according to God's original design that need to be recaptured in the church. And here's where it comes from. Ephesians 5, we've been spending basically this whole series in this one text. It says this, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Let me stop right there. By the way, guys, you want to memorize a Bible verse? That's the one. By the way, that's one verse before the one that most men know. The next verse is wives, submit to your husband. The verse before it, verse 21. Isn't it amazing how men miss verse 21? It's right there. And they're like, oh, there it is. Highlight it. You submit to me. Verse 21 says mutual submission is the foundation for any kind of S word, for any kind of submission. What does this mean? This means there are times in every relationship and in every marriage that you submit to your wife, and there are times when she'll submit to you. It's a team. It's a partnership. It's a military, two officers together saying, how are we going to win this battle? Well, I think this. Okay, let's do that. Oh, no, I think this. Let's do that. There are times where that comes to conflict, and I know that's where it gets really hard, but it's a picture of a partnership of full status, full unique differences, but yet at the same time, what are our roles here and how are we going to live that out? I love what Andy Stanley says about this one verse. He calls it mutual submission. He says this is what it looks like, because it says out of reverence for Christ. What's that mean? Stanley says this way, I've never forgotten. He says, it's almost like you're talking to God and you're like, God, man, you have changed my life. I am not the same man I used to be. You have transformed me. I am so grateful. How can I show you my gratefulness? What can I do to show you how much I love you and what you've done for me? And we don't ever think this way, but it's almost as if God goes, really? You want to know? Yeah, I really want to know. I'm so grateful. Okay, serve your wife. Huh? In fact, submit to your wife. No, God, you didn't understand my question. My question was, I want to show you how much I understood your question. Submit to your wife. Do what she wants. Put your needs aside. Put her needs more important than yours. No. Can't I sing songs? Can I go to church 5 times a week? Here, I'll even give more than 10%. I'll give 11%. He's like, you don't get it. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. He's saying that to both wife and husband. You understand that? And by the way, guys, can I talk to you a second? You know what we do? We, because we read somewhere in the Bible, and I'm going to show you in a minute. Well, I'll read it to you first, and then I'll say it. The next verse. Wives, submit to yourselves to your own husbands as you do the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church, his body, of which he is the Savior. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit to their husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. By the way, I'm sure women have noticed this. I don't know if men have. There's a lot more said to husbands than wives. We are so good, men, at saying, hey, you see what it says there, woman, submit. And we're really good at not reading the rest of it. Because the rest of it says, and we can talk about headship today too. It's in the chapter, we don't have as much time, but headship means this. Men, are you the head? Yeah. And guys, we're like, yeah, that's great. You know what we think? This is what we think it means. I'll make her do whatever I want because I'm the head. Just as Christ is the head of the church, I'm the head of her. You know what we should be thinking? Wait a minute, what did that look like when Christ was the head of the church? Oh yeah, he died. That means if I'm going to be your head in that way, I'm going to sacrificially serve her. To lead is sacrificial love, sacrificial service. It flips it all upside down. In fact, here's what I've said many times to men around this country. Guys, you want to know what head really means? It means your head's on the block. That's what it means. You're going to be held accountable, guys, for your wife and your kids before the throne of God. Now, will they be accountable? Of course. They're responsible for their own lives. But in a sense, he says, you're the leader. I'm holding you accountable. Your head is accountable. That turns up the heat on men. And I talk to guys all the time. It's like, you gotta be kidding me, man. My wife won't ever follow. I go, you know what, dude? I get sort of fired up. I go, are you leading her? Can I say to you men right now, are you leading your home spiritually? Man up. Be the man that's the head of the church like Christ was. Are you praying with them? Are you getting them in the Word? Are you laying down with your kids at night and saying, let me show you what it looks like to be a man or woman of God? And they're seeing that in how you live and how you sacrificially lay down your life for your wife. Most of the time, not. What I hear women say to me is like, okay, so I'm supposed to submit to a guy who comes home from work, turns on the TV and won't talk to us all night, drinks a beer or two, puts the kids to bed and tells me to do everything. I'm supposed to submit to him. I'm like, that gets really hard. And I just want to grab that guy and go, dude, do you understand what submission means? You submit to him and then to her, and it makes sense that somebody would want to submit to you. Now, the thing that Kathy and Tim both say so well in this book, and I'll just drop it in here, because so easily we go this, well, when he starts, then I'll start. What they say, and I think they're right, is it only takes one. It'd be better, of course, if both did. You can only take care of one person, not him, not her, only you. If you're married to a guy who won't do that, surrender to Jesus anyway. If you're married to a woman that won't do that, surrender to Jesus anyway. It's not about what they're doing or not doing. It's not about you changing them to do it. And by the way, guys, when we get passive, you know what women do? They take over. They do, because we're so stinking passive. Somebody's got to lead, and they will. And then we feel that as disrespect, and there's the chasm. I know I'm getting off on tangents, but that's what happens in this whole submission thing. God says the original intent is you're different to complete each other. You're equal in status, but here's what it looks like. Husband, submit to Jesus, and then submit to her. Wife, submit to Jesus, and then follow him. It will not be perfect. It will be really messy. And I'm going to give you a homework assignment. If you really want to know what this looks like, I don't have time to sort of walk through the verse by verse, but it is a great picture in Philippians chapter 2, verses 3 through 11. I don't see anybody writing that down. Write that down. Philippians 2, it's a book in the New Testament. Find it. If you got an iPhone or iPad or Droid or whatever, it's so easy to find Bible books now. Don't have to look all through. There it is, Philippians 2, verse 3 through 11. You want to see a picture of what that looks like? You will read about Jesus Christ living this out. And by the way, you want to do something really cool? Read it together. There's an idea for a marriage. And if you're not married, read it together. And talk about together, what would this look like? Don't go, hey, you need to start. Don't go there. Won't go well reading the Word of God that way. Read it and say, maybe you pray and say, God, would you speak to us? Let's discuss this. What would it look like to consider my needs not as important as your needs? That's would look like submission. Okay, I got two women that are going to come up here, and they didn't know it till they walked in here. Lindy, you're one of them. Oh, Ann, you're coming up again? Grab that mic. When I was getting on my motorcycle this morning, I text Becky and Nancy, our campus directors, and I said, Ann can't be with me today. I think the congregation deserves a woman's perspective on this, so find me some women. And Ann has done it. This will be her third service. Ann Thompson, and then Lindy walked in, and we grabbed her as she walked in, about an hour ago. And so they don't, you sort of know what I'm going to ask, but thank you very much. Tell them who you are first, how long you've been married, kids, all that kind of stuff.
Ann Thompson, I've been married 30 years, 3 daughters, 5 grandkids.
Wow.
I'm Lindy Underdown. I've been married a little over 2 years.
And her husband's sitting right there. Yeah. And pregnant. Due when?
May 5th.
Awesome.
But I haven't really told everyone at work yet. So.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Oh, sorry. Your dad would do that too, so okay.
He already did, so.
This is Steve Andrews' daughter, so, okay, either one of you take this. What does submission look like in your household? And you guys been married how long?
A little over 2 years.
Okay, so you're in the front end of this thing.
Well, I was thinking about this. I went to public school my whole life and then went to a Christian college, and I had never heard about all these, I don't know if anybody's familiar with it, but it's like the complementarian, egalitarian perspectives. And
yes,
this is a big thing at the Christian college, and all these people are interested in dating. And but I never met anyone who, I thought I would meet all these great Christian guys at Christian college, and I thought it'd be so easy finding someone, with passion and a love for Christ, and I didn't. And then when I met Cam, he had this transforming experience with Jesus Christ, and I had never met anyone with such a passion, and that's kind of what made me fall in love with him. And I would say, when I hear the word submission, I don't like it at all, because I'm, oldest child, type A, I'm a teacher, I like to be in control, and it's hard. And I think, for our honeymoon, we went on this 6-week road trip across the U.S., and I don't think we've ever fought as much as we did on that trip. Because we kind of went with, not a lot of plans. Like, where should we go? Let's go to the Grand Canyon. Let's go to California. Let's do this. But I think I would just say that when you do have someone who really loves you like Christ does, who I know, would lay down his life for me and shows me, that kind of servant love, it's incredible. And so it's a lot easier to submit to each other, and because I like to be in control, and it's hard.
But, Ann, what about you?
I was going to say, then there are the rest of us who did not grow up in the church, who did not grow up with this kind of an ideal of what marriage is supposed to be like, and who became Christians later, and whose marriage of submission and mutual submission was very, very messy. Because every couple gets to that place where it's, you meet my needs now, and no, I'm not going to meet your needs till you meet mine. And it doesn't work, and it takes you a while to figure out that it doesn't. And for me, in prayer, quietly with God, he had to talk to me and say, Anne, I want you to take this crown that you have on your head, leading this thing, off of your head and put it on his. My husband didn't ask for it. He couldn't have ever asked for it. He didn't know he didn't have it.
But you knew.
No, but seriously, in prayer, that's it. And so how it looks for me now, and it's still messy at times, okay? We haven't gotten to a place where we never are like that. But I submit to God. I don't worry about him. It's not for me to worry about his walk with God, what he's going to do to submit to me, how perfectly he's going to do it. If I'm in submission to God, when we walk up to those situations, and we've moved 7 times, we've done a lot of having to compromise, then after I've talked it through with God, talked it through with him, somebody's got to make the decision. And he makes the decision, because I didn't set up the system. I'll talk to God about that when I get up there. But he works through his chain of command.
And answer this, either one of you. If your husband asks you to do something that's obviously not what God would want, lie, be immoral, cheat, do you submit?
No, absolutely.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. Your first, answer to God above anyone. And so that's when our conversations, it's like, is this what God wants for us? And we have to talk about that.
Yeah. Anything you want to add, Ann?
No, absolutely not. If somebody wants you to do something that you know is against what God wants, get the help that you need from the hierarchy of your church or from wise people around you. You're not in it alone.
Yeah, that's good. All right, give them a hand. Thank you very much, Gail, for coming up. That was great. And let me just close with this. They both said it, and it's funny. I could have picked almost anybody to come up here that I know well at this church, and I know they're going to answer somewhere along those lines. And I don't know if you heard it, but this is what they said, and it's what I just have been saying for the last 30 minutes, and that's this. You will never submit here until you submit here. Do you hear Ann say that? Do you hear Lindy say that? It's like, if I submit to God vertically, and I'm going to do what he wants me to do with my life, whether I'm a man or a woman, it makes this a lot easier. I'm not saying it's perfect and it doesn't get messy, because it still gets messy in my home and in your home. But when this is lined up and the crown is really his crown, this is different. And again, I'll close with this. It doesn't depend on him or her. It depends on you. All you can do is take care of you. So the only thing I would say to you as we get ready to walk out of here today is this: surrender to Jesus. That's where it goes. I'm going to say the same thing next week when we talk about sex, and let you text in questions to try and get some answers. What's God's heart on that? But it's going to come back to, will you, will I, in every area of our life, whether submission or sex or headship or doing marriage, will we do it God's way? And the only way we can, and that's the glory of the cross and the resurrection, is we now have the power, because of Jesus' blood and resurrection, to do it the original design way. Not perfectly, but the possibility is there.